Welcome, welcome, everyone. Look at it. Everybody's coming in. Good morning, good morning. Look at everyone. 83, 89, almost 100. Thank you for being here, everyone. Good morning. Oh, yeah, good idea. Fabulous. Oh, we have emojis going.
Good morning.
Love
Happy to
it.
see that number up over 100. We
Look at
apologize to
that.
those of you who got locked out this morning from our welcome session. We assure you that it has been recorded and we will work to make it available as quickly as possible. For those of you that were not able to get in, for those of you that got creative and buddied up with colleagues, we appreciate it and we appreciate your grace as we kick this off. We're so excited to have all told, over the next 2 days, 480 participants, I believe, have registered for this conference. So we're so excited to share and collaborate and network with our colleagues and learn together today. We appreciate you joining us. If you did not hear the message from the secretary, we will make that available to all of you. We still have some folks jumping on. We'll get started in just a moment. All right. So welcome all of you to our third annual Multilingual Learner Conference. We are so excited today to have our opening keynote, Juliana Urtubey, a first-generation bilingual immigrant who has worked throughout her teaching career to serve as a mirror for her school community, helping students to be proud of their identities and families to acknowledge their strengths and contributions to the community. As 2021 National Teacher of the Year, Juliana advocates for a joyous and just education for all students, one that is inclusive and celebratory of all students' identities, families, and communities. Since being announced as National Teacher of the Year in May 2021, Juliana has shared her joyous and just message with pre-service teachers, educators, and policymakers across the country, including at the White House and through US and international media, including People Magazine, The Today Show, Univision, Telemundo, and Colombia's El País, El Espectador, and RCN Noticias. We welcome Juliana Urtubey.
Buenos dias. Good morning. Hello, Maria. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. You are so sweet. I'm going to say the magic words we've all been saying for quite some time. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. I am so excited to be here with you today. When I heard the title for the conference, I said yes, overlooking the fact that we are starting at 6 a.m. my time in Arizona. But I have to tell you that being in front of teachers is where I love to be. It is where I'm supposed to be. And so thank you all for taking the time to learn and grow together. So today, this morning, I really want to talk to you all about this framework that I've slowly developed over many years with many people, students, family members, colleagues, staff members at school, but it's also been inspired by countless activists, linguists, thinkers, shapers, and movers of this world. I call it a joyous and just education, and I'll share with you my story, but I'll also talk to you about what it means to have this holistic inclusionary framework for education. It's something that I believe we're all inching and walking our way towards together. I think that it is incredible to recognize the power that's in this room, and even though it's virtual, I can still absolutely feel it. So yes, my name is Juliana Urtubey. I'm a proud national board certified teacher. Those of you in the room who are also board certified, I salute you. It is not an easy process. I am in the process of maintaining my certification and learning a lot as we go. I wear my pin each and every day as a symbol that my students are my best and brightest teachers, and that I have to learn from them first and foremost. I am so proud to be the first Latina National Teacher of the Year. It gives me incredible pride, not only to represent the Latino community, but also first generation communities. And what I'm mostly here to talk to you about, linguistically gifted communities. I'll share more as we go. So today I'm going to tell you my journey of understanding why a joyous and just education is so important. It starts at Crestwood Elementary. We built a school garden together, and I'll share about that school garden, but mostly towards the end. And the reason that I saved that school garden for the end is because the metaphor here isn't for everybody to go and build their own garden, although I would be probably the happiest teacher if you did. The metaphor is for us to think really carefully about how we design space for inclusion and how we bring community together in that space. Before I do, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about the incredible power that you all have in your great state of Delaware. In 2021, your state teacher of the year, Kim Stock, and I became dear friends because I'm also 2021. And so we went through this whole year of learning together. You can see in that picture, she invited me to virtually present in her class, and her class of newly arrived first generation immigrants, mostly all Latino like me. And she said that the joy that they felt to be able to speak to another teacher in Spanish, to see that a teacher who looked like them could be elevated to this kind of platform was really inspiring for them. She even said 2 of her students wanted to become teachers. And if you can see, that was a pretty small class. So I think that the work teachers like Kim do move mountains. And with that being said, you have 2 more amazing Delaware Teachers of the Year. You have Miss Todd Brown from last year, and then you have Miss Lockwood from this year. Miss Lockwood is a dual language teacher. She works at a dual language school, I believe 5th grade. And I had the opportunity to meet her not too long ago. And I can't tell you what powerful teachers you have in your state. So look them up, call on them, celebrate them. And just be super glad that they're representing your state with so much tenacity, rigor, and joy. So I start with this quote from Gerardo Munoz, who is the 2021 Colorado State Teacher of the Year. I start with this quote because it grounds me. Gerardo is one of those people who is a truth teller and really helps people orient and pivot in ways that help change our actions. We were sitting down and we were talking about why we do what we do, how our paths have changed since being selected as Teachers of the Year, but how it really hasn't, and what is the origin of our why. And Gerardo shared with me that the opposite of dismemberment is remembering, that he had to walk back his education to find pieces of him, and that his work is that none of his students have to come back for pieces of themselves in their educational journey. For me, this was earth-shattering, and it reminded me of my commitment of building joyous and just spaces where students get the opportunity to continuously come and show up as their fullest selves. If we're going to thrive, we have to, from day one, know who we are and be able to thrive as our truest selves, not come back and figure out, okay, who was I before schooling? Who was I before I lost my language? Who was I before? Fill in the dots. That is our role. Our role is to ensure that our students get to find out who they are as they learn and grow with us. I'm also reminded of this quote from Alice Walker. Alice Walker, if I could pick tias, she would be my tia, because I love her poetry. I love her fiction. I love her thinking. In a poem that's called Hope is a Woman Who Has Lost Her Fear, she writes that hope is always the teacher with the toughest homework. And I couldn't agree with you more that hope is our toughest teacher. And she does give us some tough homework, but we are here for the charge. And so I, just like many of you, have thought long and hard about my future as an educator. And it is a hard profession. It is a hard job to do every single day, but it's a job that fulfills me. It is a job that reminds me of what kind of levers education can pull in many, many communities and how life-changing it can be. But like you, during the COVID pandemic, I was so overwhelmed. I remember the fear of trying to log in all of my students, my kindergarten students on that particular day, and then finally doing it and then losing my Wi-Fi connection. That moment catapulted me into this moment of fear of how are we going to do this? And then in each moment of fear, I was quickly reminded of my students. And I was quickly reminded of things that they were doing that were awe-inspiring. Sometimes it was everyday things like looking outside my window and seeing that my front door neighbor was another family that went to the school that I taught at, watching them all sit around their basketball court with their laptops, trying to get into class, and the bigger ones helping the younger students. Sometimes it was different things that kept me in my moment of purpose. And so I'd like to tell you my story of hope and how that story of hope connects me to this commitment that I have to be an educator each and every day. So this happened in a time long before COVID. It was the first day of school, and you can see baby Juliana holding a sweet potato. And so it's the first day of school. It's Las Vegas. We're on the blacktop. It's hot, hot, hot. And we have one job, and it's to help all of the students find the correct line. And you all know on the first day of school, we have one very important thing to remember. Don't lose any children. So family members, mothers are panicking, making sure that their children know where to go, where they're going to pick them up, you name it. I'm one of the only teachers on campus that speaks Spanish. And this makes it quite tough to help the families feel welcomed and help the families feel like they know what's going on, because there's a mutual linguistic gap happening in our school. Anyway, I'm in the hustle and bustle of trying to get everybody where they need to go. And all of a sudden I look down and I have sweet potato in my hand. And I'm not exactly quite sure how I got there, but then I see one of my students from the garden club, one of my garden nomies, running away. I see Kimberly running away. Kimberly is in 5th grade. She knows where she's going. She has all the confidence in the world. But I make a mental note to go and talk to her afterwards. So I go and I find Kimberly and I go, mi amor, ¿qué es esto? Tell me more about this, and that's teacher code for what's going on. Why did you hand me a sweet potato? And Kimberly, without a second of pause, looks at me and she goes, Miss Earth. That's my nickname. My last name is Urtubey or Urtubey, and the kids called me Miss Eartubey and then Miss Earth because of the garden. She looks at me and she goes, Miss Earth, you taught us how to grow all sorts of incredible things in the garden. And I spent all summer investigating the best way to grow sweet potatoes, and I wanted to bring you my very first one. This happened many years ago, but I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. Because Kimberly, by putting that sweet potato in my hand, snapped me into my purpose. And I'm seeing the reactions, I'm seeing the hearts. And I think that all of us have a Kimberly sweet potato story. And I want you to take a second, and I want you to bring your Kimberly into your space right now, so that that person, it could be a student, could be a colleague, but so that a family member, that person sits with you today and sits with you through this commitment of building a holistic collective framework among teachers across this country of a joyous and just education. So I want to read you a book. I would not be a good elementary student or elementary teacher if I did not read you a book. Someone once asked me, Miss Urtubey, what is your love language? And I said, children's books. And I don't know if anybody in the room feels the way that I do, but there's nothing better than setting a purpose with a text. And so this is Dreamers by Juji Morales. She is an incredibly talented and generous artist. And I asked her if it would be okay for me to share this book across the country as I talk to communities about linguistically gifted children. And she said, absolutely, I would love for you to do that. And I said, okay, let's talk copyright, royalties, et cetera. And she said, no, please just tell people that if they loved the book, to order it from a local bookstore and share it with other people. And so thank you, Juji, for allowing us this space to have your art in our learning today. I'm going to call attention to several things. She does mixed media art in her illustrations. So on this desk, you see her own art from when she was a child. Underneath the sewing machine, you see mixed media. So you see that she actually uses textiles and different types of modalities to bring her art to life. I would love for you to pay special attention to two things in this text. Number one, the animals that naturally migrate beyond people-made borders. And two, I would like you to think and look around how the mother is depicted in this book. Dreamers by Joji Morales. I dreamed of you and then you appeared. Together we became amor, love, amor. One day, we bundled our gifts and crossed a bridge outstretched like the universe. Adios, corazón. And when we made it to the other side, thirsty and in awe, unable to go back, we became immigrants. Migrantes, you and I. The sky and the land welcomed us in words unlike those of our ancestors. There were so many things we didn't know. Unable to understand, afraid to speak, we made lots of mistakes. You and I became caminantes. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found a place we had never seen before. Suspicious, improbable, unbelievable, surprising. I want you to take a quick look at our friend in the top left corner and keep an eye on her, because I truly believe that librarians and teachers are, well, everything. Unimaginable. Where we didn't need to speak, we only needed to trust. And we did. There's our librarian. Books became our language, books became our home, books became our lives. We learned to read, to speak, to write, and to make our voices heard. Someday we'll become something we haven't yet imagined, but right now. We're stories, we're two languages, lucha, resilience, we are hope. We are dreamers, soñadores of the world. We are love, amor, love. Colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. I love this book because although it does not tell my migration story is quite different, and I'll share that with you in a second. It tells the migration story of very many of my students. And the most important part about this book is that it encapsulates the possibility of space. When we have space that is designed to welcome, to include, to inspire awe and curiosity, when we have spaces where belongingness is unapologetically available to absolutely everybody, spaces get transformed. And while I know that this journey is not easy for many of my students and many first-generation folks here, I know that education definitely has a role to play in making sure that we can all thrive together. So that is me. That's me and my mama. I had made some choices with my bangs, both in kindergarten and during COVID. I don't know if anybody else in the audience also cut their bangs during COVID, but I cut very short bangs because I'm so tired of looking at myself in the screen. It was before you could hide yourself screen. Anyway, I see some other people did the same thing. Okay. Anyway, so this is me and my mama when I graduated kindergarten. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and inside my home, wonder, awe, love, curiosity, nurturing, protection. And outside of my home, the realities of a civil war and the violence that it brought. And so my family had to make a really tough decision, and we decided to go to the United States. But like I told you, my immigration story is one of a lot of privilege. My father was born in New York, and therefore, when my sisters and I were born, we were born as US citizens. We had dual citizenship. My mother's residency was not easy, but it was possible, and it was facilitated by that process. Nonetheless, when we got to the United States, we came to a world that was unlike any world we had ever been to. And when it was time to enroll us in school, my mom enrolled us in the neighborhood school. When she got there, she saw that it was a gray school, metal detectors and metal bars on the windows. And when she walked into the office, she did not feel safe. She did not feel it was a school that was able to keep me and my sister safe. And it was not going to nurture our identities. It was not going to nurture our language. So my mom did an about face and left that school. And she pulled the small community that her and my dad had gathered for some support. And within that community, somebody suggested a bilingual magnet program. So she goes to the school and she sees about enrolling my sisters and I, and there's no room. And she tells the front office, well, I studied linguistics. I can help teach Spanish. And my husband is a bilingual music teacher. He can do extra music classes and enrichment with the students. Are you sure there's nothing you can't do? And just like that, my sisters and I were afforded the opportunity to be able to be part of a bilingual program upon our arrival. When we would move to Arizona after that, I would not have access to a bilingual education anymore. But nonetheless, those years were formative, and those years helped me build a strong identity. As I became a teacher, I realized that had a huge part to play in why I became a teacher. But I also realized that it shouldn't be up to families to have to search far and wide for a school that was joyous and just. It shouldn't have to be up to the families to leverage and present their gifts for them to be welcomed. On the contrary, schools should be able to be to identify and celebrate and honor all family strengths, and be able to have a school in each and every single neighborhood of this country that is joyous and just and ready to applaud and receive all sorts of children. So I became a teacher. I became a special education bilingual teacher because I knew how incredibly important it was for our special education populations to have access to linguistically gifted instruction. My students and I loved working outside, and that's how the garden became a place, is by watching my students love to learn out there. We also planted a monarch way station garden, which is literally like on their way. The monarchs, when they migrate from the north to the south, need little stopping points with milkweed to lay their eggs and water and places to rest and recharge. I got to learn the most magnificent things with my students that to this day have become metaphors in my personal life and in my professional life. One of which is that the monarch does not make her migration in one generation. In fact, it takes about 3 or 4 migrations of the monarch to make a full migration path, meaning that she has to stop and lay her eggs, and eventually her eggs and her offspring will continue to make the journey for her. And I thought about what a beautiful metaphor this is for building more just spaces, is that every generation inches us closer. And it's really our job to make sure that we learn from those that have come before us, our elders, and that we pass it forward to our future generation. So we planted this beautiful garden, and our students, my special education students, and I would go outside and we'd search far and high, low and high, for these little monarch eggs. They were these tiny eggs, like smaller than the ballpoint of a pen. We'd go out there with magnifying lenses and we'd bring in the eggs, and we would take care of them from the time that they were eggs all the way to the time that they were butterflies ready to start their migration. My students knew how to observe in the garden when it was a female versus a male monarch, to watch carefully where she went so that we could find all the eggs. See, something like 5% of the eggs actually make it to become butterflies. And so we took this role very, very seriously. Then we would bring them inside my classroom, like you can see, and we would watch the metamorphosis, each metamorphosis being just as incredible as the monarch butterfly hatching from her chrysalis and opening wide. And my students learned to carefully observe and carefully love nature. The wonder and curiosity that came from this lesson ultimately translated into huge learning gains for my students. These are students that have learning disabilities, short-term memory issues, language processing disabilities, and these are also linguistically gifted students, students that speak 2 and more languages. These are students who came to me in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade with pre-primer reading levels, who, when I was told that they could be bilingual, that they could be proficient in many languages, I was told that I was quite crazy and that that wasn't a possibility. And I knew that it was a possibility. And so I show you this picture because this picture was supposed to be just a short essay about what they learned and valued from learning alongside the butterflies. My students asked me for more pages so that they could tape their pages together to write all of what they knew. See, they knew that they had a role to play in preserving the monarchs. They knew that what they did mattered to the monarchs and it mattered to each other. And so what I ultimately realized by teaching linguistically gifted special education students, and just in general teaching, is that we share our hopes and dreams. That teaching is hard because of many, many things, but ultimately it's hard because we want to see our students thrive. And sometimes we don't have the resources, we don't have the times to ensure that. Sometimes the cards are stacked against our students in ways that make us feel small and powerless. But I remind you to remember that you're not, that inside your classroom, everything you do matters, and that your students are benefiting greatly from you. And so when it was time for this beautiful monarch to come out, we would know, because they go from being this emerald green to purple. And when they're purple, that means this butterfly is going to come out maybe in 20 minutes, maybe in 4 hours. And it didn't matter. At that moment, we all popped out from our chair. Whatever we were doing was not as important as joining this monarch butterfly as she transformed. And, you know, it's cheesy, but it's true. It reminded of us of what we're capable of, that everything that we need to journey in this world is already inside us, and that our environment really matters. Having fresh water, fresh plants, fresh food, a community to fly with, that those were the things that really shaped us. And so from listening and learning from my students, I realized how powerful I was as an educator. I realized that they reflected a reality to me that sometimes the world did not reflect. And so in this idea of teachers becoming I'm so sorry, guys. In this reality of teachers becoming powerful, it comes with us accepting our expertise. And with that being said, there are things in our educational system that don't fit us. There are things that do not reflect our brilliance and our possibility. For me, one of those things is the term English language learners. And I'm going to tell you the story of Vanessa so that you understand where this story comes from. So I started working with Vanessa when she was in 3rd grade, and Vanessa was shy and she was reluctant to connect with me, with her peers, with the school. And so I said, okay, I need to do a deep dive of who Vanessa and her family is so that I can connect. I very quickly found out that Vanessa is, her first language is American Sign Language. Both of her parents are deaf. With one grandmother, she learned Tagalog. She's from the Philippines. With the other grandmother, she learned Spanish. She's from Mexico. And then Vanessa acquired English informally and came to kindergarten to acquire an academic English. By the time she got to me, Vanessa spoke 4 languages. Yet our school system didn't have a way to communicate her brilliance. Instead, they told me that she was below a level 1 on our English language scale, level 1 out of 6. And here I am looking at a brilliant child and a QM file that does not match her brilliance. And so I very quickly shut that QM file, threw it to the side. I was quite angry at the moment. And I remember turning to her and I said, Vanessa, you're not an English language learner. You are linguistically gifted. And it's my job to make sure that your gifts have a place in the school. And so what we decided to do was that Vanessa would teach our younger students. She would help me teach our younger students American Sign Language finger spelling in order for them to boost their letter names and letter sounds. To my early childhood friends out there, it's a great multisensory strategy. So she taught them, and not only did my students' letter names and sounds go through proof, but Vanessa's place and belonging did, and therefore her confidence rose. She was still shy. She was still slow to connect with other people. That's part of her personality, and we embraced that part of her personality. But now I knew that she had the full confidence to be herself in our classroom. She didn't have to dim down her light or shy behind anything, that she could be her truest self. Vanessa, I hope, grows up one day to be a philosopher, because her and I have had many deep conversations about language and power. I remember one time she asked me, so if I'm linguistically gifted, what does that mean for my parents? And I said, well, they are also linguistically gifted. And she said, well, okay, they speak ASL, American Sign Language, and my mom speaks Mexican Sign Language, so I guess she speaks 2 languages. But what about my grandmas? They only speak Tagalog. They only speak Spanish. Are they linguistically gifted? And I said, yes. There are no rules to being linguistically gifted other than you acknowledge the power of language, that you are on your own journey of discovering your language stories, that you own the power and the necessity of linguistic diversity and linguistic justice. There's no gatekeepers, there's no matrices, there's no rubrics, there's no tests, there's no nothing. You just are linguistically gifted if you're committed to the beauty and the power of identity and language. So that's the story of linguistically gifted. And I will be honest with you, when I started my journey as National Teacher of the Year, that was just a drop within the whole framework of a joyous and just education. It is by presenting to other ELD teachers, dual language, bilingual teachers across the country that I've realized what a powerful tool linguistically gifted is for all of us, because it reflects the power and brilliance we see each and every day. And so I have to say a huge shout out and thank you to all the teachers across this country who have shown me how powerful that term is. And with that being said, I encourage you all to use that term. It belongs to us all. When you're talking to your students about your students, when you're talking to your families about your students, when you're talking to policy makers, administrators, etc. That is a term that you all have shown me that means a lot to the educators in this country. And so a joyous and just education, what is it? Well, you got a little sneak peek with linguistically gifted. Really, a joyous and just education is that every single person within a school community experiences joy and justice every single day in their learning and participation in community. Joy is different than happiness. Joy comes deep from within because you know who you are, because who you are has a place and a value in your learning community, and that who you are and that value is connected to absolutely everybody, meaning that your parents also have that role and value, your grandmother, your neighbor, etc. Oftentimes, and it hurts when I see this, oftentimes I'll see teachers extend an asset mindset to their students, but not so much to their community. They might be understanding why a child might be undocumented, but not why their parent would be undocumented. And so I think that a joyous and just education includes us extending that to absolutely everybody within our communities, unequivocally and unapologetically. And just education isn't as big and scary as we think it might be. Really, it's listening to our students and ensuring that their voices and their ideas and their hopes for tomorrow have a place in their education, that we're designing with that in mind. And so a joyous and just education is really about intergenerational learning. It's about inclusion on its deepest levels, not just inclusion of people with learning and thinking differences. It's inclusion of work schedules. It's inclusion of knowledge that families bring. It's inclusive of sensory needs. You go down the line. We never can build the most inclusive space because we're always learning. But the trick is to ask ourselves, how can I make this a little bit more inclusive? How can I ensure that the people who feel less welcomed, less successful, less joyous in this space get to feel just a little bit more in this space? And so with that being said, I'd like to really ground our conversation today in this idea of linguistically gifted, and upon further exploration and reflection, what it means. What I've come to understand is that space has a big name in all of this work that we're doing, and so does language. And so if what we're calling our students is multilingual learners, then we have to be actively building a world where multilingualism is not only sustained, but it's thriving. So this has to thrive in our schools and outside of our schools. Within the last even 6 months, I've seen a shift in how multilingualism is presented in this country. Secretary Cardona recently unveiled the new campaign called Raise the Bar. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I strongly encourage you to check it out. He talks about requiring a multilingual world for our students, and I'm so excited. I hope that when we talk about this multilingual world, we're talking about this multilingual world and not just for the business leaders of tomorrow, because sure, languages help us be leaders for tomorrow. But I hope that we're building a multilingual world because it's something that we honor. We honor linguistic diversity. I hope that we're building a multilingual world because linguistic justice deserves to thrive. And that it's not just for industry, that it's our linguistic responsibility to ensure that we have spaces in and out of school where students can be their multilingual selves, where being multilingual is the norm. And we expect absolutely everybody to be multilingual, but particularly we divert our resources and our energies first and foremost to students who have had forced language loss through migration, through policies, etc. I'm speaking about students who are first generation or even second and third generation. I know in Arizona, we had some really tough educational policies in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in mining towns that really separated people from their language. I know that the history of boarding schools and Native American boarding schools really continues to this day to have a huge impact on linguistic and other cultural connectedness. I'm talking about valuing African-American language that used to be known as African-American Vernacular English, and before that, Ebonics, and now is African-American language because it is a language, and that we have a place for those languages to thrive. I'm talking about our students who speak sign language and their parents speak sign language, that we look at it as deaf with a big capital D because we admire and we value the culture. And we know that that culture needs a sustaining place to thrive. And so what I realized by building a garden was that place is important. When we all acknowledge the place that we come from, and then we can share a collective healthy space, we cultivate belonging and identity. And that it's incredible. It's a slow process, but it's an incredible process because when there is a space where everybody just belongs, when we're used to not belonging, when we're used to having paradigms of our English being gatekeepers, whether we are a newly arrived mother or a grandmother that has lived in this country for 10, 15 years, but we don't speak English. We're used to being marginalized by those policies, informal policies that are sometimes routines and practices. But when we have spaces like gardens, intentionally designed spaces for everybody, things shift. When we have and design spaces in this way, we begin to heal identities. And I'm not just talking about the students. I'm talking about linguistically to teachers like me, I'm talking about teachers of color. I'm talking about our staff members, our cafeteria workers and bus drivers, bus monitors that might not feel respected and valued. And I'm talking about the family members that are trying to heal their own elementary, middle, high school traumas through their children, and are sometimes a little bit reserved to participate in our spaces because of those traumas. Or I'm talking about families who school does not look the way it did in their home countries, and they're just learning to navigate and learning to see the invisible expectations. And so when we build spaces intentionally, we have the opportunity to heal identities, to build identities, and just as importantly, grow resilient identities. Yes, we are making the business leaders of tomorrow because bilingualism and multilingualism is very important. But more than anything, our communities need resilient identities and places for us to practice those resilient identities. And so now I will tell you about the garden and how we built it, but mostly what I've learned from building it alongside my students and their families. We started with tiny 5 garden beds and not much community input. We really didn't know what we were doing. I didn't even know how to garden before we started putting in these garden beds, but we lined 5 garden beds, and I went out there with my students, and I saw the shifts in their behavior, focus, and learning. So in 2014, everything changed. I realized going into this that I didn't know much, but that what I didn't know, I could learn within community. Now I realize the impact that co-constructing this garden had on our entire community. Our students helped design every single inch of this garden. They put thought into the metaphor of how we built the garden beds. For example, they're filling in here the monarch life cycle garden. The children are putting soil into these garden beds that represent the egg. To the right of that picture, you see the monarch caterpillar. We got the opportunity to work with a recycle artist, and I'm sorry, an artist that used recycled materials. And we use pipes and the hubs from the wheels, ladders, dollies, and we put together the materials to be able to make a monarch caterpillar and use it to vine and grow. And then the last garden bed was a butterfly shaped like a butterfly. And so our students got input from design inspiration all the way into what kind of materials we used. I remember the contractors would come on campus and my students had their clipboards and they would grill these contractors about, the best bang for their buck and the most sustainable materials and, what kind of discount they were going to get because, they fundraised all the money. And so they needed to see their money well spent, etc. The kids were amazing in doing this. We also were able to do this because we built slowly and together. We had community build days where we invited our entire community and sometimes had over 200 people helping us build these gardens. And what we learned was to learn intergenerationally. We learned that the work of the grandmothers mattered as much as the work of the 3-year-olds. I show you this picture because this was our early childhood garden that we built so that it was developmentally appropriate for our youngest students. In the middle, you see a hexagon, and that hexagon represents the bee highway. This whole garden was themed as bees. We took the little tricycles students had and we wrapped electrical taping so that the bicycles became little butterflies and little bees. And the students, the little 3-year-olds, helped us build fill the inside of that hexagon. So they took their little toy trucks, they went over to the wheelbarrow, they filled it up with a decomposed gravel, and then they pushed their little toy trucks over to that area. They dumped the toy trucks, and little by little, handful by handful, we had a bee highway where the students could ride their tricycles in celebration of being little bees in their garden. And this is what I mean about everybody having equal value and having a role. Ultimately, what we wanted to communicate to our community was that this was a school that cared deeply about the community and that the teachers were so honored, incredibly honored to have the opportunity to be their children's teachers and that we were going to take good care of them. We were going to nurture them and love them and take incredible responsibility with their learning. I didn't realize how much my students were going to teach me along this process. My students ended up raising over $80,000 to make these gardens come to fruition. We had grants, we had family foundations support us. We did school free dress days. As you can see, we wear uniforms. And so they got to pay $1 if they wanted to wear a free dress, but they made certain to have just policies, meaning that if you didn't have $1, no worries, you could just participate anyway. And then they made a math lesson out of it. They counted the dollars. They had charts to say how much each class had, how much they had towards their goal, how much was left. And it was just incredible. What they also taught me was the possibility of inclusion. See, my students, my special education students got the opportunity to go out there and learn with me every single day. And then they got the opportunity to go out there and learn with their general education classes. And they got to transfer the knowledge that they learned from my class to their class. And they became experts and stewards in their class. My students and students who are not technically on my caseload, but were part of our garden club, well, we all became nomies. And becoming a NOMI reminds me of the possibility of adding identities, never having to subtract identities. And so we became the NOMIs, which is gnomes who are homies, and you put them together and you get the word NOMI. And we became NOMIs, and I made very many felt hats and burned my hands more times than I would like to admit with the hot glue gun. But something happened when we put on those garden NOMI pointed hats and our aprons and our bee wings and our butterfly wings. We became caretakers of our school and our community, and we absolutely loved it. To this day, I still have students who reach out and message me or forget they're with their cool high school friends and come up to me and give me a hug, and they'll say, "Miss Earth, it's me, your garden NOMI." And this reminds me of how important it is to build a collective identity at school with our students that allows them to keep all their other identities, but it also allows them to remember how important they are in the school. Our students ran farmers markets where they actually didn't charge anybody for anything. They had a donation bin, but really what they wanted was their community to have fresh fruits and vegetables and invite people to come help in the garden, and they did. My students would chat up any mom or dad or grandparent that would come up to the school to grab some vegetables and say, "Hey, do you know that we have garden club on Friday mornings? Do you know you could come help us? We actually are looking for people who have extra shovels because we need to dig the compost," etc. They were very, very convincing. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that we were able to have 2 consecutive summer garden camps for our students. My students did not have access to enrichment summer camps. They had access to rote learning, remedial type summer programs, but not these kinds of really fun summer programs. And so I had the opportunity to be able to fundraise for 2 summer garden camps that were project-based, student-led programs. And our students got to cook each and every day with the produce from our garden. And the left, you see my students that are part of the summer camp. And to the right, you see my students that used to be my students, their cousins, their brothers and sisters, their moms, their dads. Everybody would come together to make sure that we could feed 120 people each and every day. And the students took great pride in being able to be chefs and to be collective members of their community who really cared about collective wellness. And I sit here and I think about how maybe the ideas of linguistically gifted and joyous and just were just budding. You know, I knew that there were values that I had deep within me, but how these values really allowed all of us to find so much joy within this learning that we were doing together. And it wasn't just the joy, it was the belonging. So I want to tell you one last story, just kidding, second to last story about this element of belonging. This is Haynes on the left-hand side. And let me let you know, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you earlier, all the pictures that you see here are pictures that I'm sharing with family and student permission and with their blessing. They have all encouraged me to use their real names. They are really proud of their stories. And I'm really grateful that they have trusted me with their stories to share. So this is Haynes. When I met him, he had just arrived from the Philippines. He was in 3rd grade, and he had this beautiful, warm smile. And although we had a mutual linguistic gap, I could tell how eager he was to participate and be part of our school. And so I translated using Google Translate, one of our upcoming Build Day flyers. And I said, "Haynes, I hope you can come this Sunday or Saturday." And I gave him a big old hug, and his arms kind of flailed. I don't think he's used to teachers hugging him. Anyway, so I waited that Saturday, and there he was. He showed up with his Lolo, his grandfather. They each had a shovel in hand and a big bag of okra seeds to share with our garden. I would later, I'm talking about years later, find out that the okra seeds were from the Philippines, and that in the Philippines, it's almost a rite of passage from your childhood into your early adolescence to plant a garden. And when you can maintain that garden, that's when you've shown that you have that responsibility. I learned this years and years later. Anyway, so Haynes and his grandfather that Saturday helped us build our first layer of our adobe cob bench. Adobe is kind of like earth concrete, and you can see us in the first picture mixing hay, earth and water with our feet. And that's Haynes in the tan shorts. And that's me right next to him. It was really satisfying and really fun. And then handful by handful, we'd carry it over to where we wanted our bench to be. And we slowly started filling this bench. So Haynes and his grandfather helped us do the first layer. A couple months later, Hannah, Haynes's middle sister, arrived from the Philippines. But before Hannah and her mom left the Philippines, they knew that Hannah had a place of belonging at her school because Haynes was so forward thinking and responsible and thoughtful that he had all of her Garden Nomi waivers filled out so that upon her first week of arrival, boom, she could just join our garden club. During our next community build day, Haynes and Hannah and their parents and their grandparents helped us finish our adobe cob bench, which we, of course, painted to look like a monarch caterpillar. Come on, guys, there's a theme. And every time they sat on that bench, I thought about the incredible power of intergenerational learning. The next school year, guess what? Hannah, their youngest sister, also arrived from the Philippines. And I remember I ran into Hannah and Hyra at the grocery store during the really scary part of COVID. And I remember we did our best to communicate how much we cared about each other, how excited we were to see, but it was COVID. So there was 6 feet between us and, we had our masks, et cetera, and we were scared, and I think I walked away wondering what the impact of Hannah, now a high schooler, what the impact of building this garden together really was. And I think she read my mind because later that day, she sent me this message, and I'll give you a second to read it. For me to think that this garden was a safe space, a welcoming bridge, a bridge that brought so many incredible people to our garden, a place that literally was the incubator for Joyous and Just, the incubator for linguistically gifted because of this beautiful, incredibly diverse, wonderful community. I think about how as educators, we really do have a lot of control and we do really have a lot of ability to bring joy and justice to our students. Haynes and Hannah and Hyra, cute H names, not only learned English while they were in the garden, but they remembered how important their language Tagalog was, how important it was to be reminded of home. And so I have to tell you that it wasn't just a club, it was a family. That idea didn't only apply to our students from student to student. That idea began to apply from family members to staff members, from family members to other family members, and from staff members to staff members. It was a bridge to heal our differences, to be able to see that we all deserve this beautiful place of belonging. And when I reflect back, why was it what it was? It was simple. It was because it was a place that equalized and dignified us all. And I think that those are 2 incredibly important ingredients in not just equity, but also in thriving, right? Because we're really pushing. It's not just about equity. It's not just about having tools. It's not just about seeing my best self. It's about giving me the space and the world for me to thrive in. And before I say goodbye, we might have a minute or 2 for questions and answers. I'll leave that up to the wonderful Melissa. But I wanted to tell you a brief story because I think that I just now realized, in the last couple of years that I really built this garden for my mom. And so I leave you with these words that she told me and with a whole lot of gratitude for the work that you do.
Wow, thank you so much. Verklempt over here. We are so honored to have you speak and launch this conference off in your incredible keynote. So many crossovers between what Maria and Carrie have developed as the foundation for this conference going forward and really identifying what it means to thrive. it's just so inspirational, the connections that you make and the roots and the growth and the trees that you have created, and the space for us here today. So lots of thank yous in the chat coming through. Amazing, grateful.
Thank you all. So sweet. And this is what I mean. I think educators really reflect this work, that this work belongs to us all. And that somehow, like, it's like mycelium, the fungus that grows under the ground. We all are in tune with each other, which is why I'm so grateful to Delaware for all the incredible work you all are doing.
Beautiful. And thank you so much for the shout out to Delaware educators as well. We're a family, and we're all here to uphold one another and ensure that we all thrive. And that way we can help our learners thrive too. Thank you for being here, Juliana. It's wonderful.
Yes. I hope that you all have a wonderful day of learning. Thank you again.
Thank you, Juliana. And I hope you can see all of the wonderful praise for you and your amazing story and all the work that you do in the chat. We are filled with gratitude. And thank you so much for your willingness to come share your story with Delaware. For those of you who are still on, we ask you to just hang on one moment because we are going to take a quick break, but because we were unable to get some of you into the welcome session, we wanted to take a moment to make sure that you all know where you're going and how to navigate. You missed just a couple of logistics this morning during our opening session, as well as the welcoming remarks from our Secretary of Education. That recording will be put up for all of you, so have no fear. You will have a chance to listen and hear that, but we do want to go over a couple of logistics before you take a quick break. I am going to share my screen so that you all can see the Padlet, which will help guide you, as well as your Sched platform. Can you see that, Carrie?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so I apologize if you are hearing this for the second time, but I don't think it can hurt to hear all of the great things that we have in the Padlet, because we are going to be continuing to add to this. In fact, I have already been dropping some things in there from some of our upcoming presenters. But this is one of two platforms that are going to be filled with tons of great things over the next 2 days. So this Padlet has all of the great things for you in reference to our session presenters, as well as some things that you can do to earn door prizes. We had you do some tasks before our conference, and we already have some people who are winning door prizes for doing some of those things. Lots of people are commenting on things that have happened before the conference, things they were excited about. Lots of people tweeting away. We've been following those. People have been retweeting those. So please use the hashtag multilingualDE. We've had people heading over to Flipgrid to also record videos about sessions they're excited about. And now that we're in the conference and sessions are happening, you're listening to our keynote, and now you're going to be entering into your sessions for the day. We're asking you to also comment on Flipgrid. Tell us about those sessions. What are some of the things that you're taking away from those sessions? What are the things that are most powerful or hitting you in the heart in those sessions? And how are you going to use those sessions and the information that you're learning to help Delaware multilingual learners thrive? So connect with your colleagues on Flipgrid, connect with them on Twitter, comment in the Padlet. And then in the right-hand columns, as you kind of scroll over, you'll be able to find lots of information about our current presenters. All of their presentation materials will be housed there, along with their recordings once we have those available. And then all of our previous conference materials are there as well. So this is like your one-stop shop for all things Multilingual Learner Conference. From here as well, and you can kind of see that as Maria's scrolling over all of that good stuff. It goes over, it's an endless Padlet full of information. But on the far left-hand side, this is also a great way for you to get back to Sched. So you don't have to have two different things open. You can actually click right there on that succulent. It will take you right to our Sched page, and you can go here to see your schedule. So many of you have kind of figured this out already because you found your way to our session, our opening keynote. But each one of our sessions has its own link to Zoom. So you're going to need to go into each one of your sessions to activate your link. It's going to be different for every single one because we're running simultaneous sessions. Each one of them is going to have their own link. And it's not going to be available until the actual time for your particular session. So if you're going to be going to this session at 10:30, you're going to want to click into that and open the Zoom. So I think most of you have figured that out now because you made it. We had 210 or 15 participants in Juliana's session. So I think most of you ended up making it there okay. But I know at some point we had some people that were still in the waiting room from the previous session because they were in the wrong spot. So make sure you go to each one of those sessions. Make sure you click on the one that you're interested in going to because there are 4 for each particular session. In addition, we have some pinned sessions. So you'll notice there's some breaks in there, as well as our working lunch at 12 o'clock. We're asking that you join us back at 12 for our lunch with Delta. They're going to give us a quick little update about their organization and talk to us a little bit about the things that they have going on. So bring your lunch, join us there. It'll be kind of a chance for us to talk as we're listening to what they have to share with us, and we will be able to hear all the great things that they have going on. If you go back up and you click on your picture, which is right under that succulent, you'll be able to see your individual schedule. So if you've made your schedule, you'll be able to actually see the sessions that you have chosen. If you haven't had a chance to make your schedule yet, you can go back and pick your actual sessions and you'll see all your pinned things there. If for some reason you have some support questions or you're struggling a little bit, that helps center at the top that's under 8:30. That is going to be open all day. So you can click in there. That will give you a WebEx link. And we have Kevin and Alyssa on the line helping us out all day long. So you can go in there. That will take you to a WebEx link and they will be able to give you some technical support. All right, Melissa, Maria, anything you can think of that I did not cover? Check the chat and see if we have any questions. We have dropped in the links for the Padlet and the Sked.
I believe that's all for now. So keep tweeting, keep flipping, and collaborate with your colleagues throughout the day. We will see each of you in our sessions. And then again, I believe we'll all be together as in the afternoon for our Science of Reading panel. So we hope to see you in each of our sessions. Again, if you have any issues, please use that help desk link. They will be able to help you. And then if need be, communicate with the rest of us. We appreciate you being here and we'll see you in the next sessions that begin at 10:30.
Thank you, everyone. Take a break. See you back at the next session.